You know, this podcast was originally supposed to be a sales podcast.
I don't think I've ever been that consistent.
Yeah, Cal's just got to show up.
Sometimes my ears get all plugged up.
After we finished the podcast, you said the only reason why you laughed is because you would look at me and see me laugh. If anybody wants to go watch that episode, there's going to be just a subtle cat noise. Because my cat Parker comes in and meows. And I'll tell you, okay, if you see me walk away in the video, Adam kept his composure that whole time. Yeah, because you guys are the same age, right?
No, Dan's like 26. He's your age.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. He just looked so much older.
He does.
And even showed us how to use Bitcoin.
Yeah.
You know? And he transferred me $10, which I have no clue what to do with that $10. But from this podcast, John, I hope you're proud.
We've upgraded everything because of that podcast. We spent thousands. Ed was the very first guest to bring us muffins.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to an exciting episode. My name is JJ Vola. Alongside here's my co-host Cal, and welcome to our 21st episode of What Do You Do podcast. Today is a milestone video, and we wanted to make a little special episode for you guys because, it's not too often a lot of podcasts make it to 20 episodes. There was a statistic that I heard early off when we started the podcast. Out of, in the first 3 videos, 90% of podcasts don't make it past the 3rd episode. Out of that 10% that make it past the 3 episodes, 90% of those podcasts don't make it to the 20th episode. So Cal and I are excited for this milestone, and we're really giving us a little bit pat on the back because of what we went through and what we've learned, and we're going to be talking about that all today. So, Cal, how are you feeling today about today's podcast?
Props, bro. We made it.
We made it. I know.
Yeah, we made it to 20.
Yeah, I know. And that was one thing that we talked about early off in your kitchen. I was like, we just got to hit episode 20, and the rest will be from there. Well, we're gonna keep sailing after that moment. But I was like, if we can stay committed, show that we're committed every week, not missing a single episode upload, we'll certainly have this for a long time. So that was a huge accomplishment for us, and we made it. Here we are. Holy crap. So
it's incredible, man. You know, there's been some hills and valleys, along the way, and I think sharing that with everybody today is going to be super awesome for everyone to kind of learn behind the scenes a little bit. Some people that have no idea about media production and video production, all that kind of stuff, and doing a podcast, we've been kind of through it. So
yeah,
it's very exciting. And I guess the first question we want to ask is, what have we enjoyed about the first 20 episodes on the podcast?
Yeah, let's even take it back to even the first podcast. It's crazy to think even how this podcast even got started too, right? Like just before we get into that question, because this podcast was originally supposed to be a sales podcast.
Yep.
Right? Because I come from the sales industry, being a car salesman and all that kind of stuff. And the original idea that I had was I wanted this to be a podcast for guys to share their sales journey and what it's like to sell in other careers. I'll be honest and say I'm glad we didn't go that route, because who wants to listen to a bunch of sales guys? Absolutely no one.
Yeah, a bunch of greasy sales guys. Get them off of there, dude.
Yeah.
But they also have probably really good stories. But this is way more interesting.
Yeah.
Way better.
I know it's more broad. A lot of people, we kind of talk about, when we first started, like, is it really a good enough niche? Because it's not like we're talking about real estate agents. We're not talking about trades. We're not talking about what it's like to be a doctor. It is quite the broad channel, but we do like that because it's something new every week. And we're going to go through all the guests again today to talk about that. But, that's one thing that we love. We love, that it's not just one topic every week. Like, we're learning something every freaking week, and we're meeting different people, right? So it's just, and we're going to get into that a little bit as we get into the conversation. But I'm so glad that, and just for a lot of people, okay, we've had some little logo discrepancy on the podcast. So is it What Do You Do podcast, or is it What You do.
What you do. And initially when I saw it, I was like, oh, it's the what you do podcast.
Yeah,
and
I know.
and then after I was like, oh, he's doing a play on words. Like this is great, you know, like
Yeah.
it makes sense to me after that, but for everybody else.
Yeah.
And in the comments, definitely let us know. Like when you guys look at the logo,
Yeah.
you guys think it's what you do or what do you do podcast.
Yeah,
So
I know. I was really trying to help use less words and really put the emphasis on the do. Okay, but yeah, let's take it back to what have we enjoyed about the last 20 podcasts. And honestly, for me, anyways, meeting new people has probably been one of the best. Experiences. I've learned pretty quickly that it's not what you know, it's who you know. What you know does help, but what I've learned is, and we're going to talk about even the opportunities that we've had because of this podcast. It's networking and meeting more and more people, and the fact that we're branching out to different careers. Like, it just means that we can have these different connections, like wherever we go, whatever industry. Like, we're kind of selfish in that sense, because then if we need somebody to help us with marketing, we might as well just go find somebody marketing to come on the podcast, So it's really good, but I hope everyone that's listening at home, they do see that joy of, learning something new every week too. But what has been your what have you enjoyed about the last 20 episodes?
It's so funny. Like all the guests have come on, like it's so cool to find out about their journey. How they went from that first job at Pizza Hut all the way to like becoming a digital nomad or digital marketing and all that kind of stuff. And it's so interesting. The path that everyone takes to get to where they are now, and then where they're going in the future, and just what they've learned on their journey. So. I think that's the coolest thing is that everybody has their own way of doing things, and just learning about those experiences and then just how like diverse everybody is and what they do and whatnot. So
I even love the stories of where the people will spend 4 to 5 years in a school and they come out, they never wanted to go in, or they go into a whole different career. After spending, years, education, time, effort, everything that goes into an education, just to come out to do a whole different career, and that's it's definitely quite the story. Or guys that for example, when we had Isaac, starting at Pizza Hut, just slaying pizzas, and now he gets to travel the world and play with Bitcoin and all that kind of stuff. Like it's crazy the jobs as you scale up in life will get you, to some great careers,
And even like, people that like a lot of the first guests that they're like friends of ours or acquaintances in business or whatever it may be. And just like, we know them kind of like on the face level, but like diving deeper into their story and like really finding out, what makes them tick, why they're really doing what they do and all that kind of stuff. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I mean, we're doing stuff for, to make an income, make money and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, people are, they're there to really help and assist and do things that they're passionate about, Yeah. And that's what I found with a lot of people on the podcast, that the passion, is really, if they're really good at what they do, they have a lot of passion for what they do. So it's just so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting on to our next question. What were some of our original goals that we started on this podcast?
Yeah, so I mean, like one of the major goals, like we wanted to obviously start the podcast, but meet as many people as we could, interview them, find out what they do, and then we wanted to take that information and then put it up on YouTube, put it in the podcast to educate other people about different careers that are out there, and either if it's something that maybe they wanted to try out or just know more about, right? Like I've always been interested in jobs in like finance and whatnot, and like how much people make and how they got there, what kind of schooling they had to go through to get there. So I mean, there's so many different things, but so
I know even some of the original goals that I remember that we had was even because originally for the podcast, I mean, there were so many ideas that we wanted from the podcast. I mean, and we're going to get there, which we'll talk about near the end. But like some of our original goals that we wanted were, we wanted to go to people's workplaces. More probably business owners would probably make more sense, because I don't know if you were an employee to be like, hey, to your boss, could I have these guys come on your your workplace and film a podcast? It was obviously gonna be more for business owners in that sense, but that was one goal that we wanted, was to take this podcast and go mobile, and to set up this kind of setup, bring it to them, and then have that B-roll shot in the background for the footage, right? And that's something that we are looking into, but that was one of our original goals. 20 episodes later, obviously realizing it takes a lot more time to do that, the setup, the equipment. We're still learning about all the equipment, and now having to do that somewhere else, right? Yeah. So that was one of the original goals that I remember that we made. But we'll get into the other goals that we have later into the podcast for sure.
Yeah, let me jump in. I mean, one of them was we wanted to have like 4 guests lined up as well, kind of every week, so that we were ahead of the schedule and all that kind of stuff. And that was definitely my department. And some weeks we did good. Like, we'd have 2 back to back and like we'd be good. And then we'd feel like, we could coast for a bit. Then we'd be like, oh my God, like it's Monday's approaching. Like we got to get a guest on here. So getting just ahead of the curve, making sure that we always had kind of someone in the pipeline that was going to come on the show. And, what's kind of funny is that not everybody wants to come on a podcast. You're like, you think that everybody wants to be on a podcast, but there's some people that do and some people that don't. So that's one thing that I'm still working on. But so if you guys want to come on the podcast, feel free to reach out, and we'll get you on here. So,
and even with that too, I think when we started this podcast, even me too, like, I mean, it felt like such a great idea that it was going to be a viral sensation right from the get-go. Right? Which we did have one short that did went pretty viral in that sense. But when you feel like you make something that's new, something new to like the podcast world, like this isn't, I would say, a traditional podcast like what we're doing, but it is a good podcast feel in that sense. And, it's tough because you go through the commitment with no, every episode with no results. In that sense, like you get that high from that one video that, got a lot of shares, a lot of comments, all that kind of stuff. And you feel so good. You're like, wow, we're going to make it. Right. But then after it starts going downhill and then you're getting like, 20 to like 500 views per episode, or the case is, then it just starts hitting you. You're like, wow, what are we doing wrong? What was so good about the first 2 episodes? Now we're, we got better sign, we got better cameras, but it's you got to stick with it, stay with the consistency. But that was one thing that I definitely overthought back then. And even to Cal's point, like we thought we were going to be so, like guests would be like flocking at us to want to come on the podcast. And we, it's safe to say we've had actually a lot of people recently reach out to us, which is great. But, we thought we were going to have 10 to 15 people lined up. We were going to be set for like half a year. And you know what? We're just going to take a name and number, all that kind of stuff. So obviously that's not the case. And as you're getting into the startup, you certainly have to spend the time to research, find people, outsource, but it will naturally grow. I'd say, once we hit that 1 year mark, 2 year mark, those people will want to come back on the podcast. And even the guests that we have on, we would love to have like a re-episode of those people, right? Especially if they change careers or if they're going a whole different path. But that's more of a 5-year term thing.
So JJ, why did you start this podcast?
Yeah. So even to like start, from the original comment before, like I just wanted something to get into the world of social media. Coming from sales, I always loved being on camera. I always kind of enjoyed the fact that you can film something and there's someone from around the world can be watching this video. I always loved that aspect. It's funny because when you start going into all these learning about everything about like how to be a YouTuber, how to be a podcaster, all this stuff, you really get a lot of just trainers out there in the world. And I get it. You find somebody that you love, you start buying their courses, and that's why they are doing great, because they're teaching somebody like you to want to be a podcaster or a YouTuber or whatever the case is. So those guys are doing great because they're already educating people, right? But to be just a YouTuber, right? Like just, snap of the fingers, you want to just all of a sudden be a YouTuber. Like it takes a lot of time, a lot of commitment. If you're on a budget, you got to learn everything, right? So that was one thing that I wanted to learn. I wanted to, learn how to edit videos better. I wanted to learn what it takes to be in a production industry field type, because really the world that we're going into, if you don't have a social media background or some sort of media understanding, because Cal and I are getting into, business opportunities, and to have and to understand that kind of, that awareness of, social media and what it takes to actually be able to do something like this. That's why I wanted to start this podcast, and I'm glad that we did, because look at us now. We're 21 episodes in.
I can't believe it. And it's funny, like you talk about YouTubers and all that kind of stuff and having viral videos and whatnot, and it's funny, like this type of content is very informational. It's like people are getting value from it, like, and I'm all about value. Like I love, like, being able to provide someone with some type of value that they're gonna enjoy, and they're gonna learn something from it and whatnot. And that's definitely like one of the biggest things that fires me up about the podcast. But even like just getting into the whole media world, it's always been so interesting to see what actually happens behind the cameras, and like all the post-production stuff, and JJ is like been an absolute animal. Like I haven't touched any of the editing, any of the video stuff. He's been educating himself on all this. I feel like I'm just more of like the cheerleader that's like, yo, dude, we can do it. Like, and I just need to do a better job at getting getting some guests. But JJ's has been leading the charge on all this stuff, and it's a lot of work, and like being consistent with these videos every week, posting every day on all the different social media platforms, and building and growing the brand up, and it's a lot of work, guys, and it's not for everyone. And you can see the passion in this guy to like really want to grow this podcast, and have you guys engage with it, and come on and be guests, and definitely subscribe, and like the content, and share it around to people that you might find of interest. So it's definitely been exciting to be a part of this process, and I really appreciate being co-host on the podcast, and just being a part of this environment, and also as much as like we're getting something out of it, we're also like providing a lot of value to the guests, and learning about their journey. So starting this podcast is probably one of the coolest and greatest experiences I've had in such a long time. And anyway, yeah, so that's basically.
And it's really crazy. I mean, when we look back at the evolution of like the podcast, like even from the thumbnails to like the edits, it's really funny like where we even started to where we are today. If you don't have to even click on the videos, just go and scroll and look at the thumbnails. And even now, it's been our 21st episode, having new cameras, a whole new recording system. Like, we want to evolve, we want to get better, because that's what it's about. If we're not great, which I know we never will be, okay? Just like losing weight, you're never going to be happy with where you are, because you always want to see yourself getting better and better. So, and that's what we're doing. We take one little information and we just want to keep improving. That's like one thing I just love seeing, the slow but continuous progressiveness that we're going through. So now, what have we accomplished, and what haven't we accomplished?
Yeah, so the big one is obviously 20 episodes, which is incredible. How many shorts, dude? How many shorts have you edited and put out there? Like, can we even...
So I think roughly, if on YouTube, between the full podcast and all the shorts, I think it's north to about 150 to 160 individual videos.
160 videos, dude. Like, that is incredible. Yeah. That's a massive feat. Like, to be able to put out that much content, like, it's incredible, and now it's now on the internet, and now it's going to be seen for years, for decades, however long really YouTube's around for, and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's a massive accomplishment, and just obviously having the 20 episodes, which is incredible. And then the consistency of it all, and like putting it out every Monday, which has just been one of the coolest things. Like, I don't think I've ever been that consistent. I mean, JJ for the most part. But
Yeah, Cal's just got to show up.
I'm just like, I just gotta add this to the story, share it on LinkedIn, Facebook, like boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, if I don't post this, like I know I'm getting a phone call. No, I'm scared.
Yeah, I know.
No, it's great. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, we have accomplished a lot. It's really cool to see, even just from the comments. Like love what you guys do. Like even some of our guests that have been on the show, like they just reached out to us and they're like, love what you guys are doing, enjoying the content. And I simply find out, like, where are you from? Are you local? Do you want to be on the podcast? And then, sure enough, they get excited about that, right? So it's really cool to see. I think the biggest accomplishment I have is just meeting new people. As much as I'm like have a background in sales, it's so different when you're meeting new people from a personal level than like a sales level, right? As much as you care about the customer, at the end of the day, the only thing that's in the back of your mind is how can you get them to buy the product and buy like the money aspect of the sales, right? Versus this is like we're building relationships, right? Like we are building something great for so many years, and I'm sure I could message anyone from my list and be like, hey, how are things? I need a favor. You know what I mean? And that's, I think, what's really cool about the podcast. That's one of I'd say my personal biggest accomplishments. But what haven't we accomplished? Everything. Actually, one thing I will say that we haven't accomplished, which we are still looking into, is sponsorships.
Yeah.
That's one thing that, and I think I wanted to hit the 20 episode milestone before we really kind of got serious, because I don't want to try selling some sort of podcast show to somebody that doesn't see that we're not serious about doing a podcast. So that's one thing that we haven't accomplished, but that's one thing in our future goals that we look forward to, is getting our first main sponsor that sees and enjoys what we're doing and what we're bringing to from a content point of view. But
Sure.
do you feel like we haven't accomplished anything that you would have liked to? Be a millionaire? No, I'm kidding.
No, the sponsorships are a big one. We're working on something. But yeah, that's a big one. Obviously, everything that you do, you want to be able to generate revenue from it, because obviously money will keep the dream alive. So, we showed 20 episodes and we made it all this way. Now it's like time to, okay, who can we work with? Who can see value in the podcast, and who can we partner up with, and ultimately get eyes on their products or their brands and whatnot. So, and then, yeah, the other big thing is obviously getting those guests. So, JJ, who was your favorite guest on the podcast and why?
Yeah, I know. We've had a lot of guests for sure, 18 to be exact, because our first two was just Cal and I. But I would say my favorite podcast, as much as Eric Johnston's episode was probably the most funniest, and I'm definitely a person who loves to laugh for sure, as maybe you've seen from all our short video content. I like to make it seem like we put a lot of good laughing videos out there. But my favorite actually is John Simo's. And if anybody wants to go and check out that episode, please do. You're probably going to get 5 minutes into that episode and be absolutely annoyed by the audio quality, the picture quality. If you watch the whole thing through, thank you. But that one, I learned so much from that podcast, and which is why there's a new recording system, which is why there's new cameras in place. And I dove myself above and beyond, spending multiple hours just self-teaching myself to get better, because I was like, it was so bad. And I felt really embarrassed by the podcast, which is so funny. And it was even uploaded, I think, 2 days late. And it was really because, for someone like John Simo, sure, he might not be as well known in a sense of like huge production person, but this person is very highly involved in like, BMW edits, Insta360 cameras, all these huge brands that he's worked with. And I can't even produce a podcast. Okay. So it was so funny, because I think it was just the audio was so bad because how far away he was, how turned down the mics were. And that one was certainly my favorite podcast because I learned a lot from it, and even talking to John Simo after the fact, and how helpful he was. So if you guys need any sort of filming education, uh, John Simo is going to be your guy. So that's my favorite podcast. Cal, what's your favorite podcast?
Even before we move on to that, I sometimes my ears get all plugged up, and that episode I was deaf. Like I was lip reading. I was like trying to make the best out of it, and then the audio didn't turn out that well, and I was like, oh, we're doing great. This is awesome, right? And it's one of those things, right? Like we're learning and all that, and it's awesome. It's great that after the podcast, like John gave us a hand with like trying to get the audio fixed up and whatnot. And it was just like a whole team effort, to try and make it as good as possible, because to redo that podcast and the way that it went down, is so difficult. So,
Even I remember a comment you made was after we finished the podcast, you said the only reason why you laughed is because you would look at me and see me laugh. And then you started laughing.
Oh, this is my cue, laugh. Yeah. So, I mean, going back to the favorite guest, everybody was incredible that we had on the podcast. It's a lot of fun having everybody on. It's funny. I actually wrote down somebody else, but I really reflected and I just kind of looked back at like our first two guests, and Jesse was incredible. But it's funny, like Jeff was like a rapper, restaurant owner. And he was like, I think growing up, like he was into drugs and like all this kind of stuff. And he's really pulled himself out of that life. And he's really trying to make a name for himself now. He's like, they launched his studio since they've been on the podcast. And it's like going super, super well in Toronto, where like anyone that does like Instagram photos or rap videos or music videos can go to their studio and shoot. And they do editing and videography and all that kind of stuff. And having Jeff on the podcast was just like, I don't know, it was just like such an amazing experience for me. Just to like, hear him come out and talk about all these different things that are super relatable for, I'm sure, a ton of people out there. And I remember at the end of the podcast, it's like Jeff being like, man, he's like, dude, guys, thank you. He's like, that was incredible. He's like, literally, it feels like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. And it's funny now because every person that comes on the podcast, I'm like, how do you feel? Like after the pod, to talk about all your stuff, your journey, how you got there, where you're at now, like where you're going in the future. And they're like, man, like a lot of people would get good feedback, and they I think they really enjoy it. Like it's kind of therapeutic to talk through your past, where you're at now, and where you're going. So I think that was super awesome. And, you just can't get that day to day, like, and this platform has allowed us to have those types of experiences. So thank you, Jeff.
Yeah. Actually, even, to step away from the questions for a little bit, I mean, let's even talk through just all of the guests briefly, like what each guest have brought to us, in a sense of value, opportunities, and what's coming, right? So our first guest was Adam, and we even talk about the relationships too. Like Adam, I know personally from the power sports industry. He worked for a finance team, and he's a sales representative for a finance, essentially brokerage to help power sports companies get finance. And you know what? It's funny because talking to people, as much as people can say like, "Hey, I'm starting a podcast. Hey, this, I'm starting that." He was the first person that just put his hand up. You know what I mean? So Adam, if you're watching this podcast, I really want to say thank you to you, my friend. You stuck your hand up. You said, hey, if you need a guest, I'll be there for you. And we lined it up. Like we made sure that you were the first guest because of how committed you are to wanting to be a guest. So I really appreciate you. Thank you for telling your story. And by the way, if anybody wants to go watch that episode, there's going to be just if you got headphones on or something like that, there's going to be just a subtle cat noise. Because my cat Parker comes in and meows. And I'll tell you, okay, if you see me walk away in the video, Adam kept his composure that whole time.
Great guess.
Yeah.
Great
Oh my,
guess.
and it's funny because you could just see the smirk from Cal's face. Anyways, funny.
Meow, meow.
Yeah, it was one little thing, and I was like, "Oh, the cat's in here," and I guess that's why you don't do podcasts in your own house.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so funny.
But even on to the next one, Jesse, same thing. He was a personal friend of mine. Or acquaintance. We worked together at Leggett Chevrolet together. He worked in sales while I was in the service industry. And, what a story, even from where he was to where he came on the podcast. Because when I last, no offense to Jesse, but when I last saw you at Leggett, you were a little nerd, okay? But now you look like badass, tattoos, everything. I was like, this is a whole new guy, and, crazy to hear your story as well, too. The fact that, what you went through, everything you went through as a childhood, and everything like that. So thank you for telling us your story. And, even like what you're doing with Jeff. So Jeff and Jesse were together. We literally shot their podcast on the same day, which is really cool. Like they were just back to back, and they're business partners, ready to start their next ventures. So they have a studio in Toronto where you can go and essentially rent spaces to film audio, whether it's like music video, just pictures, and you can rent per hour. But they have like 10 to 15 different colored booths or setups that you can take videos or pictures with. So those two guys were absolutely amazing. To what Cal was saying, Jeff's story, same thing. Like he's tried it all, and he still wants to keep going. Like he's definitely a person that's always envisioning the next big thing. And with him being a rapper and creating that content and actually staying to it, because same thing, just like this podcast, he's probably gonna make 100 videos for that one to finally hook and be heard and get viral, and we look forward to seeing that happen for Jeff. So
it's Ego Studios.
Ego Arrows.
Ego Arrows Studios.
Yeah, so check them out. Yeah. Really cool guys, and if you're wanting to get into content creation, they'll definitely be able to help you out. Next one was Matt Hayes. Yeah, this was a big one, which leads us to our sponsor of the video, okay? Which we'll kind of talk about these bottles in just a second. But Matt, it's funny. Matt, when you watch that episode, he's not, I would say, a very enthusiastic person about what he loves doing. Okay. I think he's tired. As much as he probably enjoys cleaning cars, you can definitely see that somebody who's been in the industry for 20 years and has to continuously be the, as some would say, the technician in your business, he's definitely, I'd say, worn out and wants to create the next best thing. And because of starting this podcast, that's why we brought this opportunity. And it was funny because it was a conversation that Matt, Cal, and I had about creating Matt Hayes' own car cleaning brand. So that's why we have the product on the table, because we wanted to show what has been kind of going on behind the scenes and what's driving us as well too. Not only just the podcast, but yeah, we are creating our own car brand called Hayes Detail Products. Our first big show is going to be at Import Fest in Toronto, July 29th. We're going to have our own booth near the entrance. So if you want to come check it out, if anybody knows me personally, I have a 1993 Mazda RX-7 that's going to be there. So it'll be definitely worth coming to check out. But, if you do need cleaning products, support a local brand, Canadian, made in Canada. So definitely come check us out. But what was your favorite part about Matt?
Yeah, it's funny. Like we had Matt on, and he's been a longtime friend. I grew up with him going to car shows and all that kind of stuff. It's funny, actually, this weekend, the day we're shooting this podcast, they all left and went to a show in Columbus, Ohio called the Good Guys Nationals. Massive car show. And I remember I was like 12 years old going to this show and whatnot. And they all went down to the show. And I've known Matt probably since I was 12 years old. So it's been a long time. And, he has a passion for cars. And JJ and I both have a passion for cars. And, seeing Matt here and talking a little bit more about it, we're like, man, wouldn't it be a cool opportunity, to do this all together? So, we're excited about it, and this is a really cool opportunity for Matt and for all of us to kind of all be a part of and build that, camaraderie around definitely scaling up a business that's like a really good, solid business that's been around for a long time, over 20 years, and making it even bigger, right? So, going back to the actual interview with Matt, like you said, like he's been detailing cars for a long time, and he knows a lot of people, talks to a lot of people, so definitely gets long in the tooth for him, certain days and whatnot. And this is a really cool opportunity for us all to, do something different and make things exciting again for him. So we're really excited about it.
And then let's talk about, how about you talk about Liz?
Yeah,
Liz was the next one.
Yeah, so Liz is longtime friend, high school, where I met Liz, and you know what? Like I've been following her online. She's been helping a lot of people with investing and budgeting and doing side hustles and all that kind of stuff. And she's really, really built a brand over the last like 10 years. So it's been really cool kind of following her and then having the opportunity to bring her on the podcast and find out more about what she does and why she does what she does. So, Liz is incredible. Tons of information on that podcast. If you guys want to go back and check it out, lots of snippets of information, even the shorts on her Instagram. Definitely go check that out.
Even just from like a knowledge point of view, like anybody who's looking to get understanding for like where to put your money, how to save your money, how to invest your money. Like it's a very educational podcast. And even if you don't necessarily want to watch the whole podcast, we do understand. But even go just to find out who she is. She definitely has a lot of inspiration for, just having to be smart with your money. And especially in today's day and age, you need to be smarter with your money. So definitely worth going to, contacting with her if you need a financial consultant to talk about any finance needs. Next guest, we had Dan.
Danny.
Dan Vander Crook.
We still don't know what that guy does. That's a mystery, man.
Yeah. Digital nomad, traveling all over the globe, lives in Bali, now in China, wants to start a free range chicken farm. And, that was an interesting episode. But, Dan, thank you so much for, because I think he was actually only in town for that 1 week.
Yeah.
Right. And he even said, after we were finished the podcast, he loved what we were doing. He couldn't stop raving about, such a great idea, keep at it, keep going. It makes so much sense. And, especially from a guy who's seen a lot, I'm sure in the last, because you guys are the same age, right?
No, Dan's like 26. He's your age.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. He just looked so much older.
He does, yeah.
He's been around the block.
He's been around the block, and that's why, he looks a little bit older. So, yeah.
Wow, that makes so much more sense. But even from, like, the trials that he did and, like, everything that he's just gone through, he has lived the life in such a short time that no one will ever live, in the big scheme of things. But, we learned a lot, from him. Sure.
Yeah, Dan's in China right now. He's actually helping us do some stuff with Hayes Detail. So thanks, Dan.
Yeah,
you're the man.
We'll be talking to you soon. Okay. Next episode we had was Emma. So Emma was a personal friend of mine. She was a female welder, now doing drift events, all that kind of stuff with like ladies only and all that kind of stuff as well. But
first female guest.
Yeah, she was the first female guest, which was really good. And it was really cool to see her story. Same thing. She was I think my age as well, maybe a year younger. And same thing. Like she's gone through so much. Learning what it took to be a sales representative, then to want to go into a trade, and then now she's like, F it, I'm gonna go and do my own thing. And then now starting her own events and traveling all across Canada to meet more women that want to do the same thing that she's doing. So she had such a great inspirational video, so definitely worth checking her out. Michael Dominic Ketty, he was the real estate agent. He was my personal real estate agent. He's the one who helped me buy this house. Someone who, has been in the industry for a long time, with selling houses and getting to know people. And even like from the networking that I was saying earlier, he is one person that's probably taught me that you need people to know you. And you need to know people because there's going to be opportunities or things in life that you just need help with. And he's that relationship for me. Like any opportunity that I've had for, housing. You send him a request, he's there for you. Just such a genuine, honest person, and that's why he will be my real estate agent for the rest of his life, even if he changes careers. Because quite honestly, I don't think I'm going to be able to trust anyone else. But you know what? That was a great episode. Learned a lot from him. And if you are looking to buy a house, there's a lot of great advice that he said about first-time home buying, or what advice you should do for your first episode. So definitely go check out that video. Next one was your friend Spencer, recruiter.
Spencer, yeah, no, that was through Isaac,
right.
a previous guest, but I met Spencer at a wedding, and we kind of hit it off, and we ended up finding out he's a recruiter. I was like, man, what is that world all about? So it was awesome finding out what recruiting is, and how many people get recruited, and how many people change jobs, and how often they change jobs,
and even how much companies are willing to pay for the right person.
Sure.
Like it's just like just a little mind, it messes your mind a little bit, because not only they're willing to pay more for that specific person, but they're also paying for a team to go out and find that specific person. That person doesn't really know how much that team is making off the transaction, but the fact that they are working behind the scenes to find that perfect person that's going to fit the needs and requirements of a position, mind-blowing. But he was such a great guest, well-spoken, a little tall. He almost hit his head off the ceiling a couple times. So.
he's a big dude, that's for sure. Great guest, super informational. Really enjoyed having Spencer on the podcast, and can't wait for 10 years from now, where he's at, because that guy's a beast. So looking forward to that.
And then the next one after that was Barry. He was a personal trainer. Now, the one thing that was special about Barry was he was the first guest that we had no personal relationship with, no backstory, no friend of a friend referring this person to come see, or relation. Like, he was genuinely the first guest that just wanted to be on the podcast, and he reached out to us. He said, love what you guys are doing, could I be a guest? And of course, with that would have been like our 10th or so, maybe 12th episode at that time, we were in awe of that he wanted to be a part of our podcast, that what we were sharing, the content that we were creating, he wanted to be a part of it. So huge shout out to Barry. He's not too far away from here. He's from Binbrook area. So if anybody is looking for, any personal training or helping with their fitness needs or dietary, he will be able to help you with that and put you on a proper schedule personally for you. So go check him out. I think it's Built by Barry. Built by Barry.
On Instagram, yeah. And
next. Oh, sorry. My bad. Yo, don't cut me off. No, I'm kidding. Okay. But yeah, this one's a good one. Isaac, Cal, take it away. Who's Isaac?
Yeah, Isaac is a longtime friend of mine. I met him in a co-working space called The Hive in Burlington, and we jammed out. Like, we became pretty much buddies from the get-go, playing a little bit of ping pong, all that kind of stuff in a co-working space, which is pretty classic, if enough work even gets done there. But yeah, Isaac, longtime friend. He's always been there for digital marketing needs and just personal stuff. So it was a lot of fun having him on the pod and talking about his adventures in Guatemala, doing Bitcoin, digital marketing, all the different entrepreneurship ventures that he's involved with, which is just like, every time I call him, I swear to God, there's something different. So super inspirational guy, really solid dude. And I really appreciate having Isaac on the pod.
And even showed us how to use Bitcoin.
Yeah,
Hold on my phone, grab the wallet, like a digital wallet, and he transferred me $10, which I have no clue what to do with that $10. But one day when I go and see him, I'll be able to buy him a coffee.
Yeah.
So, but that was a really fun episode. And he was the gentleman that I was talking about that started from Pizza Hut, went into landscaping, then went into the Hive and met a lot of great people like Cal and so much more, which is where he is today. So kudos to Isaac, definitely hustler, and looking forward to that cigar, my friend. Okay, I'm still waiting for that one. All right. Next one after that, Eric Johnston. Okay, so he was a relationship from Barry, and Eric Johnson, really appreciate his time that he came to the podcast and all that kind of stuff. One thing we're gonna learn as we meet more well-known people, it's definitely for something like this to take 2-3 hours with transportation to get here and all that kind of stuff, film for about an hour and a half and all that kind of stuff. Like, sometimes we don't necessarily appreciate the time when people come in onto the podcast, but because same thing, he would to go on to a show, his day, like his minimum going rate's $1,000 for a show, right? And to be able to have him on the podcast, and be able to share his whole story and all that kind of stuff, we really appreciate his time, and by far the most funniest. So go check out that episode.
Guy's hilarious. It's hilarious. Too much.
There's a little snippet at the end which gets really funny. Okay, so stay tuned the last little 10 minutes of the pod. The next one was Victoria. She was a recreational therapist, and what was really cool about Victoria, this is like where we now started to reach out to people and start to get into people's DMs and saying, hey, like, we have a podcast, I love what you're doing, would you like to come on and share your story? And you know what, from somebody that it was just a shot down an empty hallway to see if somebody's gonna grab it, she did. She loved the content that we were bringing out. She's like, yep, absolutely, I want to share my story. And even her whole journey, like, same thing, she went from wanting to she was a life coach helping people get through, and then COVID hit, she had to like rechange her whole life, and then going back to Mohawk during COVID, wanting to change her whole career, and telling us how great of a program that she had at Mohawk for recreational therapy. So thank you, Victoria, for that amazing story. Next one was John Simo. Okay, that one, probably worst episode that we have, but you know what? Definitely the most, meaningful to me, in a sense of like, wow, no matter how much and this goes for anything, you can always know more. And what, kudos to John for that one, and same thing, like, he was another person that I randomly shot a message to, like, a guy who has over 100,000 followers on Instagram. And I said, hey, we have a podcast, would you like to be on? And the fact he even saw the message and said, yes, would love to, sounds like a great idea. I just feel so bad that he got such a terrible podcast from it. But from this podcast, John, I hope you're proud, okay? Or a little bit prouder.
We've upgraded everything because of that podcast. We spent thousands because we're like, we can't do this to another guest. So thank you, John. And it wasn't a bad podcast because of you.
No.
You, if anybody
The story was amazing. Like, everything you said about your story, like how you had to learn how to edit videos from a what do they call this, HV recorders, and having to hit play, hit stop, and then get the seamless transaction. Like, everything you've learned, I'm sure, in the last 10 to 20 years of video editing, and being able to share your knowledge to people, especially for someone like me. I really do appreciate you spending the extra time and even offering, okay? Like, that podcast wouldn't have probably gone live if John didn't take the time to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to help you guys out, and we are going to fix this audio, and taking his own time. Again, we never asked, we never said, please help us, need you. He just kindly offered, and, it's genuine people like that definitely go a long way. So thank you again, John. Really appreciate that one. Next one was my mother, Heidi Tillmans. Graphic designer, came up from the sign industry, learning everything about what it is about signs and graphic design, and now is the director of signage for Trans Canada Trail. So if you're walking those trails, okay, across Canada, and you see a little sign that says the Great Trail, the Trans Canada Trail, that's my mom, okay? Next one, Cal, if you want to talk about Ed,
man,
mobile car mechanic.
That's so funny. Ed was the very first guest to bring us muffins.
Yes, that's true. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Ed. We appreciate that. And Ed was great. Super awesome guy. Had to come here, learn English, which is like no small feat, one of the most complex languages. And Ed's he started off doing the mechanic thing, and was an apprentice, went through the programs, went through the schooling, got his red seal, all that. And then started his own business, like coming here, not knowing English, and then became a fully pledged mechanic, now running his own business. And, he's quite successful at it. And he has hopes and dreams of building a shop, and he's going to have his own shop one day. And we know that for sure. And like, he's just a guy, that if he showed up to do a job for you, like, you just know it'd be done super well. He's super transparent with what he does and all that kind of stuff. So, Ed was just an incredible guest, and we wish him all the best with his business with EA Mobile Mechanics. And just a super awesome guy. He also has a white van,
Minivan, okay.
Which I drive, a white minivan, also known as the Lamborghini. And we bonded over that, we both have white vans, and we just talked about vans for like 20 minutes after the pod.
I was just sitting on the other side. Don't worry. Just like, okay, you guys have your moment.
Yeah. So me and Ed, we're gonna be buds. So,
but it was really cool. It's just a small little story. But Ed, like, one thing that was really cool, like, he worked out of that van. Like, as someone who just didn't want to work in shops anymore, didn't want to have to deal with flat rate. Bull crap anymore, understood how tough it was to be in the trades, and he goes, but I love the trade, I love what I do, I'm just gonna go do my own. And he literally worked in that van, busted his butt off, and now he has a whole new truck set up with a huge cab, and he's got a trailer that he brings along with him that has like the tire changer and balancer. So like on site, literally, whether you have rims, whether you don't have rims, he will change your tires on site and all mechanical things, except for, I think it was like engine and transmission stuff like that. He can't necessarily get into, but such an inspirational. As much as it's a mechanic trade job, like, just his story and like coming over, learning all this, and like not putting up with it, and then starting his own path. I just gives me chills thinking about it.
Eddie the man.
Yeah, thank you for the muffins, okay?
Yeah.
Last guest that we had, this was episode 20, was Clint McFly, the shoe guy. Probably one of the best stories we had was Clint's, for sure. He early years, raised up in the military family, going in at his younger years, and having that learning at a younger age, prim and proper, up by a certain time, bed's always made, clean your shoes, all that kind of stuff. And then going into becoming a barber, and, COVID didn't happen. Or COVID happened, and he couldn't cut hairs because of the fact that, it was like against the law to go get your hair cut. And then, just decided same thing. He wanted to do his own thing. Cleaning shoes, it's what brings him joy, it's what brings him peace, and now he's going back to school to become a graphic designer to implement into future shoe design. So that was a really, actually, by far, I would say one of the greatest stories that we had on the podcast. So thank you, Clint, and to anybody who needs their shoes cleaned, restored, anything like that,
Customs, purses, all that kind of
everything.
stuff. Man, he was awesome. He was like, he was in the military, right? Like, even, I think it was 9/11.
During 9/11, yeah.
Yeah. And, thank you for your service, Clint. I don't think we got to say that in the podcast. Our apologies. But, it's big, to serve for your country and all that kind of stuff. And it's definitely big of you. And, COVID happened, and he pivoted, right? Like, he didn't just kind of, back down from this happening, and he started cleaning shoes, because that was something that he really enjoyed. And I remember him saying like how therapeutic it is for him to clean shoes, to do custom shoes, to do and he loves the networking aspect of it and whatnot. And Clint is just he's a really easygoing guy. He's easy to get along with. And definitely, I went home and I bought shoes after that episode.
And it's funny, I did give him my dress shoes because I didn't want to go and spend $400 on a new pair of dress shoes.
Yeah.
So hopefully they're turning out good, Clint. Can't wait to see him.
That guy cost us some money, bro. I was like, my shoes are kind of worn.
That's right. That's right.
Oh man.
Yeah, you know what? And from all the guests, that have been on a podcast, if you're watching this or listening to this, thank you so much for being a part of our journey, and telling us your story. And we look forward to the next 20, to the next 200. We see so much passion and so much joy in this podcast. It's even therapeutic for us, like meeting new people, hearing the stories, getting new relationships that, even if nothing happened after the podcast, just to be able to meet these people is really cool. So to everyone that came on our podcast, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And even to get back to our questions that we had here. So podcast mistakes that we had. Okay. We've had a lot of mistakes. Okay. Mainly because of not being educated as much. I think a lot of people that get into a field like this or want to, definitely, or the ones that are successful, I'd say at least, are the ones that have the background of photography, filming, all that kind of stuff. I didn't. Okay. Like, I'm the type of guy, you grab your phone. Hey everyone, JJ here, selfie salesman, looking at, that was me, right? Never understood why these mics. Okay. Why do we have to have a stupid lamp in the corner to have some sort of glow behind me? Okay. But it makes for a better looking podcast, a nice displayed sign, multiple cameras, so we're getting multiple angles. So we've learned a lot. We're continuing to learn, and definitely there's been a lot of mistakes, but we're continuing to plow right over them.
I think that's what's so important, like that was the biggest thing that we talked about, like in the early days, was like, let's just get the videos out there. Let's get shooting. Let's try. Let's make mistakes and fail forward, right? And with each mistake that we had, we corrected it, and we're moving forward. We're trying different things, grabbing different equipment and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's what's so important with like anything that's out there, and like anyone that wants to like start anything, is that, listen, you're gonna make mistakes. Like, it's gonna suck. The quality is gonna be terrible. You may not ask the right questions. You may not get sponsors off the hop and like all that kind of stuff. But the important thing is that, you keep trying, you keep going, you keep, working away at it. And eventually, and enough times at bat, you're going to hit, a home run. You're going to hit, the first base run and whatnot. So, it's just so important.
And let's just be honest, okay? Your first podcast you make, okay, no matter what the topic is, whatever the case is, you're going to get 0 listens, okay? Maybe a couple from your friends and family because they want to support you, okay? They want to see what you're doing. They're excited. But the reality is it takes a long time to build something great. So whatever it is that you're doing, stick to it. You're doing a great job. But staying committed is the hardest part. And that's one thing that Cal and I have learned. And that's one thing that we are going to stay through with this podcast, because we see what the good from this podcast is.
What were the biggest, so of all the videos, JJ spent a lot of time editing these videos. So some of the clips that are out there, like the highest viewed clips, what were they?
Yeah, so we have 2 that kind of went viral. I say viral, but like over 100,000 views, in a podcast. A podcast video that seems pretty viral to me. You know what I mean? The first one was actually Jesse's, when we were talking about when he was talking about Ganga and how people would go under anesthetic just to get their tattoos done, but not just a tattoo. Like, they would have like 6 different guys either tattooing on like your full back or like multiple parts of your body. And it's so funny when you go in and you watch it on, or it was on Facebook, and just seeing the comments, right? You have some people that are like, oh yeah, 100% I would do this. And then you had a good 80% that was like, be a man, just get the tattoo. And, you can definitely see why videos go viral and why they hit the algorithm, because people are getting into the conversation of that video. So if you can create value that people want to talk about in that video, that's how you're going to get viral videos. And the one that we just had was actually Ed's video on TikTok. Same thing. It was a video that we talked about trades. A comment that I was making saying how, guys in the automotive industry don't get paid, in my opinion, for what they need to know, from learning all the trades that they need to know within just one trade of that field. And sure enough, you have all these guys in different trades, whether it was like, plumbing or electrical, or people in the HVAC system that just didn't agree with the comment that I was saying, which is perfectly fine. they're entitled to their own opinion. Okay. But the reality is, for a trade that you have to spend so much money in tools, updating tools, learning more about vehicles, then you got to go buy computers to keep up with the stuff. And you're getting paid within the $30 an hour range. Anyways, that video just got blown up and it's still going today. I think we're about to hit 150,000 views on that podcast. But the next question is, why are we committed to continuing this podcast?
I think, even from the first 20 guests, I mean, the amount that we've learned about different industries and different people and careers and all that kind of stuff, and what, how we can take that and put it into our lives, all that kind of stuff, I think is super valuable. Then also, you guys watching the podcast and learning or seeing those short videos and just taking that snippet of information and being like, wow, I didn't know that, So that's a really cool thing. That's super exciting, is to keep grabbing those snippets of information to give to you guys, or if you're watching the long form YouTube content or the podcast itself, on like Spotify, hearing like all, people's different stories, and it's crazy. Like, and what one of the coolest things is that, like, you don't have to be a celebrity or whatever it may be to come on the podcast. Like, it's just normal people that do normal jobs that, live in your local community. So I think that's what's so awesome about it, and why, definitely want to keep this rolling and keep building up, kind of our network and meeting different people and whatnot. So
yeah, and it brings us personal joy, like to Cal's comment before when he was saying about the whole therapeutic after Jeff's video, like Jeff literally stood up and was like, wow, I just feel like I went to a therapy class, because it's telling the story that he had, and one thing that I always leave in every podcast, just a fun little memento of every video, is the high fives that we do after every podcast, because of how successful it was just talking. Forget the editing, right? We don't even know how good the audio came out, or how good the footage came out, or if that camera stopped recording and then this camera just wanted to decide to not work anymore. But how great the conversation was. We celebrate that after every podcast. So that's one thing that we're going to continue to do. And that's something that we're committed to doing. So lastly,
goals for the future. So what, where are we going? What are we doing next? We got 20 episodes under our belt. What's kind of next for the pod?
Yeah. So, wow. So let's talk about, from one of the original goals, where we want to go to people's workplaces. So one of our original goals is that we wanted to create the next Dirty Jobs, but for What Do You Do podcast, but for all jobs, not just the dirty job, but just interesting jobs you'd never know about, jobs that like you get paid well, but don't need the 5 years of schooling to go and do, the trades that, same thing, you don't need, you can get your own tools provided to you, right? All this kind of stuff, right? So that's one thing that we want to do, and definitely within the next year, we're going to take this podcast and go mobile. Cal even has a 1974 Winnebago, okay? You got to go check out the social media and see this thing, because we are trying to change that RV into a mobile podcast. So that's one thing that we're looking into. How easy is that? How can we get electrical to like have the cameras mounted, lighting, all that kind of stuff, and to take with us to car shows and all that kind of stuff that we're going to be anyway. So we might as well talk to people while we're there. So that's a big goal of ours. Full production. One thing that we decided like halfway through this whole podcast is this just needs to be more than a podcast. There's another thing coming in our near future we can't talk about just yet, but we decided, instead of having a What Do You Do podcast and all these different things, that we're literally just going to call it Vola Media Group. And Vola Media Group is the media company of all the things that Cal and I are going to do. So the media company for the Hayes Detail products, the podcast, our new business venture that we're starting off as well too, and even businesses like you and the guests that come on the show that need help with their own marketing. We're going to be there to help and support them. What are other goals we have? Sorry, I feel like I took it all.
Covered a lot. And you know what? And that I think the whole thing, with Vola Media Group and whatnot is like trying to create like an authentic feel to marketing, like talking, about stories, the journey, and working with businesses that, finding out, what makes them tick. Why do they do what they do? Is it just about making money, or like is there actual passion there? Do they actually like what they do? And I think, if we can communicate that to people in a very like transparent way where people really they see the passion in that person and they fully understand like this person is here to actually make my life easier or to create value or to give me this product that's going to like help my life and make my life better. And I think that's the main goal of like Vola Media Group. Like we just want to find ways to help people fully understand like what that business is doing and why they are offering their services and products, and whatnot. So and the best way to do that is to sit down with someone in that organization and talk to them and interview them and chat about the different things that they offer. So yeah, everything from going to their site and seeing what they do, following them around, ask them questions about, the different processes that they have in their business and whatnot. So there's that whole side of it. And then this other really big thing that we're going to be working on, guys. And it's really exciting. And we're really, really excited to share it with you guys and whatnot. So I think that's there's a lot. There's a lot there.
Yeah, as Cal and I, one thing I just want to quickly touch base on, and to everyone who's listened to this so far, I came from a workplace that was absolutely toxic. Okay. I'm happy to talk about it now because I've had some time to, get clear headed about everything that kind of happened. And, I was a top salesperson for representing a company and, talk about, trying to give your 150% for a business that will never appreciate you working for them versus me putting 200% into something that I know that is going to be successful and I'm going to work my butt off to make sure. So, I'm currently unemployed. There's been so much opportunities that's come from this podcast, whether it's the Hayes Detail products, our new business venture, all this kind of stuff, Vola Media Group. There's a lot of things happening behind the scenes. And to everyone who listens, really appreciate everyone you being a part of it, because the faster we grow, the faster we can be able to bring more content like this and be able to share people's stories and all that kind of stuff. So with that said, everybody, I want to say a huge thank you. We hit the number 20 podcast, which in my opinion is very a big milestone for us to hit. And, big pound to my man Cal here. I really appreciate him being a part of this journey as well and seeing it. But to everyone listening, thank you for being a part of today's podcast, listening. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification so you don't miss out on any future content. And we'll be sure to catch you on the 22nd episode. See you guys. Woo!
Oh man. Wow. Jesus. That was a party.